Jesus is the only guy that ever came back from the dead that didn't scare everybody. It's been like 3 days, like people can go, oh, oh, oh! The dead live, the dead live! It's Jesus, run for your life! I felt sorry for the disciples, though, you know? These guys had the toughest job in the world because they could never call in sick. Yeah, listen, Jesus. Yeah, listen, 4 or 5 of us went fishing last night. We've got our sweaters. And we've kind of got a cold, and we're not going to be able to walk to Jerusalem with you today. What? We're healed? All right, we'll see you in about 10 minutes. All right, come on.
Good morning. It's Friday, Policecraft Friday, February the 16th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 Strategies of War, and Policecraft. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
In the prison cell I sit, thinking, Mother dear, of you, and the bright and happy home so far away. And the tears, they fill my eyes, spite of all that I can do, though I try to cheer my comrades and be gay. Tramp, 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 the boys are marching. Cheer up, comrades, they will come. And beneath the country's flag, we shall breathe the air again of a free land in our own beloved home. Battlefront we stood when their fiercest charge they made, and they swept us off 100 men or more. But before we reached their lines, they were beaten back dismayed, and we heard the cry of victory o'er and o'er. Tramp, 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 the boys are marching. Cheer up, comrades, they will come. And beneath the country's flag, we shall breathe the air again of a free land in our own beloved home. Of the free land in our own beloved home.
Thank you. Now, a little bit of police scanner radio from Chicago, Illinois.
I'll make you up a ticket. It's going to be a moment. 4530 Paulina should have a fire. 47 Honorary Miss Parker. 47 is Celia missing. Temper.
You know, that we're looking for is at home. The boyfriend was there, and he doesn't know where she's at. So 19 pulling out right for now.
You got it. Good one.
206 Charlie.
2006 Charlie.
Yeah, slow down. This is that warrant that 2030 got on that name check that we're going in with the arrest from 1044 West Lawrence. 2084 is going to transport for us. Thanks to the assistance.
Okay, so everything is related, or you want me to keep these separate?
2030.
30 only, go ahead.
Yeah, this is going to be a separate event for 06 Charlie. The gentleman that I ran that was here on scene that wanted to take the bike here is the one with the warrant. Can you put that on 06 Charlie's screen? The warrant and the unserved order protection, please. Just that part.
10-4, sir, we'll take care of it. Couple guys jumping on another guy at 814 West 54th. Boy out.
1210, that's coming out a little bit later, but 1215th and Loomis on my box. I'm just pulling out of there.
10-4. And the deal.
It's Adam, 556, 6206, 9036.
Trying to attack him while he's driving, so his car's moving. No damage. She damaged the outside of his vehicle. It's a gray Regal. No further.
28890.
All right. At 83, Adam, your foot is 10290, and your L is 10288.
Good night, and Paul.
From the radio room?
All right, there right now. Give us a second. 1299.
Lee, roll call is over. They should be on the radio any second.
1299, 10-4, thank you. And 1215 is kind of long there with us, so she's going to send you a PDT message. Thanks.
1272.
1272, go ahead, sir.
Squad, we're going to get situated. We'll be taking one to Central D.
All right, and that's going to be for 1269, David?
Sure, 10-4.
Thank you. And 1232?
1232. Show us heading to Mercy, 123 ticket.
10-4. 1234?
North Alley, 2
Okay, mouth of the alley, North Alley, 1600 block of 28. And you got the air. Almost for a battery in progress. A female is trying to attack him while driving, and now she is outside, causing damage to his vehicle. He's in a gray Regal. 15 for Loomis. And 1211? Oh, the 4th, 2444.
And a criminal trespass report, 603 North Ridgeway. Also Parker at 3500 Irvington.
7625 Northeast Lake Terrace. The grease fire at that location, 401.
All back, no one out here with that.
She said she'd be at the corner. Handle it accordingly.
That theft just occurred at 3002 North Spalding. CJ activated delivery. Driver says the tenants on the first floor just took the food from the delivery. For the tenants on the second floor who prepaid it, so can you CJ that location?
And that was a little bit of police scanner action from Chicago, Illinois. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the military shorts.
This is the only U.S. pilot to get an ace in over 50 years, and it has just happened. After spending months patrolling the waters in the Persian Gulf, the soldiers on the USS Bataan were about to complete their tour. But all of that changed in October. New orders were given to the Bataan telling it to head into the eastern Mediterranean and get ready to watch the Gaza shore. The U.S. and U.K. launched airstrikes in response to the conflict, and one of the ships used was the USS Bataan. However, there was one big problem. Rebels started attacking the U.S. ships with drones, so the Marines had to change their strategy if they wanted to defend themselves. A Harrier jet was taken and modified for air defense by the crew on board. Armed with missiles, the Harrier was now ready to counter drone attacks. But let me introduce you to Captain Earl Earhart, a Harrier pilot tasked with taking down drones with his Harrier. The U.S. warships in the area are instantly alerted of drones by their advanced radar systems. They then choose how they will defend themselves. Since the start of the mission, Earl has intercepted 7 drones.
You know, you come awake sometimes and you know there's somebody in the room with you, but your eyes are shut. Something wakes you up. And I was laying with my eyes shut. I had this whole thing in my head. I'm going to roll to the right, taking the gun with me, and I'm going to bring it to my chest and rack around as I roll over the candle, put the light out. And whatever's standing in the room, I'm going to hit it with a solid slug first. And that's what I did. And everything worked like clockwork. And it was this figure of a human standing at the foot of the pad on the other side of the trapdoor. And so I hit this thing square in the chest, I mean right here, with a solid slug, and it slammed it against the wall. And it dropped to one knee and then stood up again. In my head, I was thinking, what kind of body armor is that? So I shot it again with a triple X. I think I hit it a third time as it was going over the balcony. And I'm a pretty good shot. I went to the balcony and looked over, expecting to see a body laying there. It was up on its feet, heading for the jungle already.
When on August 8, 1987, the Iranian military began tracking a U.S. P-3 Orion heading slowly toward the Strait of Hormuz, they decided it would be an easy target. So an Iranian F-4 Phantom quickly took to the skies, hoping to pop up and surprise the lone aircraft, which they feared was gathering crucial intelligence that could be passed on to Baghdad. However, what they didn't realize is the P-3 wasn't alone. 2 F-14s and an E-2C Hawkeye were patrolling the area, which the Iranians didn't see until it was too late. Unaware of the presence of the Tomcats, the Iranian Phantom continued on toward its prey, and after locking on, released an AIM-7 Sparrow missile. But as the pilot watched the missile guide toward its target, all of a sudden his RWR went off, and with barely enough time to react, he was forced into a dive as missiles from the 2 F-14s came at him. Though the Iranian managed to evade the F-14's missiles, it caused his own missile to stop guiding, no doubt saving the lives of the Orion crew.
He was struggling with the script, hesitant to come out of his trailer. The hulking actor, known for his tough guy persona, had finished blocking the scene and was overcome with uncontrollable emotion. He was Neville Brand, one of the most respected character actors of the 50s and 60s, and he was filming an episode of The Twilight Zone about a World War II veteran who's forced to relive the horrors of the war. Only for Neville Brand it wasn't acting. 2 decades earlier, he lay bleeding to death in a cabin along the Weser River in Germany, having stormed it single-handedly and clearing out a German sniper nest. The Purple Heart recipient never spoke of the incident until a knock on his trailer door that day. It was Rod Serling, and after the two men chatted, Brand returned to the set and turned in a brilliant performance. When Serling passed away, Neville Brand traveled cross-country to attend the service. "I wouldn't be here were it not for Rod," he was overheard tearfully whispering to a mourning Charles Bronson. "He saved me once upon a time."
Was this the most evil concentration camp commander? Nicknamed the Butcher of Plazau, Eamon Goth was known for unspeakable cruelty and saw killing prisoners as a sport. Goth had trained his 2 Great Danes, Rolf and Ralph, to relish human flesh and would sick them on prisoners for the most minor of infractions. One prisoner said, "I saw his dogs rip a man limb from limb. Then Goth walked up and shot him." On one morning during lineup, Goth shot a Jewish prisoner for being too tall. Then as the man lay dying, Goth urinated on him. He was known for senseless killing, often shooting prisoners from the balcony of his villa as if they were game. On one occurrence, he caught a boy who was sick with diarrhea and was unable to control himself. Goth forced the boy to eat all of the excrement and then shot him. Also a fan of torture, Goth's favorite weapon was a bullwhip. When he would whip prisoners, he would force them to count out loud each time he whipped them. And if they made a mistake, Goth would start over. So,
everybody in the service of this country that's in the Department of Defense, every service branch, are out there doing their job. So 2 M1s have the best advantage on the battlefield. The old 311 Marine Corps infantrymen and the 11 Bravo U.S. Army infantrymen. Guys like you, or guys that you might become, are out there doing hard things. So those guys have the best advantage on the battlefield that they can have. And if you have the mindset like you're doing this because you're the most badass guy out there, you're doing it for yourself, we don't need you. You do this, you do hard things, so those 2 guys can crush it on the battlefield. And if you can't do that, you might as well walk out the door right now. If you think you can do that, stay here, keep on training hard. As long as you keep a positive mental mindset, you will go farther than you can think. And if you keep that positive mental mindset, you may pass the course that you sign up for. You may pass it. Nobody can guarantee that you're going to pass it.
And that was the military shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of motivation.
Let me introduce you to the concept of success. Ben Franklin was a pretty smart guy, and I want to start with a quote by him. If you do tomorrow what you did today, you will get tomorrow what you got today. You want to know what that means? The average American makes between 3 and 5% more each year. That's the deal. And in today's economy, I'm not sure we're going to make the 3 to 4 to 5% next year as employees. So it takes you 20 years to double your income in America as an average person. That's the mediocrity that we're stuck in life. And then you meet people who have the uncanny ability to double their income in a year, to get promoted 5 times in a year. The ones that beat the system, the ones that conquer it. You've all seen them, haven't you? The difference between them and the ones that don't do that is that they wake up in the morning and they think differently. They understand that if I do tomorrow what I did today, I'm going to get tomorrow what I got today. You want a bigger car? How about a nice house in Tahiti? Sure, would you love a nice house in the hills? We all want better things, don't we? We all want more friends, more stuff, more money, more security, more travel, more enjoyment. If you do the same thing tomorrow that you did today, you're stuck. Stuck. And it doesn't change. And it grows a little at a time. And you get a taste of success. But it's never fast enough. It never excites you. And when it does, it's a good month, or a good 2 months, or a good 3 months, but it doesn't provide a trajectory that creates success. So the first thing I want you to think about today is I want you to wake up tomorrow and do something different. And understand if you do the same damn thing, you're stuck. Just because you did it a certain way yesterday, there's no reason to do it that way today.
You wake up in the morning, you're failing. So you blame the president, you blame Congress, you blame Greece, blame the euro. I mean, construction industry, it's the mayor. Oh, it's the... And you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you're not failing because it's the other guy's fault. Or it's the economy's fault. But if you looked in the mirror and said, I'm failing because of me, you wouldn't like it. And you change that. And I believe the common denominator of failure in any business is excuses.
Why are you failing? You never say because of me. Oh, it's the competition. It's the economy. It's the president. It's Congress. If you wake up tomorrow morning and blame your failure on someone or something else, you have no reason to change, do you? It's that son of a fault. Son of a gun! I did everything I could. But if you woke up in the morning and looked in the mirror and said, I am failing because of me, the decisions that I make, the energy I put in, I'm not passing the blame. If you look in the mirror tomorrow and say that, you will change. Because nobody likes thinking of themselves as a failure. How often does that happen to us in our day-to-day lives? Family, the biggest excuse of all. Time. Every one of those excuses was bullshit, wasn't it? Think about it. Every single one. At the end of the day, winners win.
But as long as you don't put it on you, you have no motivation to change it. So in short, if you own your failure, you'll own your success. If you don't own your failure, you'll never dig out. And I find that in any business. Always the common denominator of failure, personally, is excuses. You don't want to be a failure, do you?
Discipline does start with waking up early. It really does. But that is just the beginning. And I always say that Discipline is the root of all good qualities. But you have to absolutely apply it to things outside of just waking up early. It's everything. It's working out every day, making yourself stronger and faster and more flexible and healthier. Discipline is eating the right foods to fuel your system. It's about disciplining your emotions so you can make good decisions. It's about having the discipline to control your ego so your ego doesn't get out of hand and control you. It's about treating people the way you would want to be treated. And doing the tasks that you don't necessarily want to do, but that you know will help you or help your team. It's about facing your fears. It takes discipline to face your fears so you can conquer them. And that's what discipline is. Discipline means taking the hard road, the uphill road, to do what's right for yourself and for other people. It's so often the easy path that calls to us to be weak for that moment, to break down for that moment, to give in to the desire and the short-term gratification. But the discipline will not allow that. The discipline calls for strength and fortitude and will. It won't accept weakness. It won't tolerate another breakdown. The discipline can seem like it's your worst enemy. But the reality is, discipline is your best friend. It will take care of you like nothing else can. And it'll put you on that path. The path to strength and health and intelligence and happiness. And most importantly, it'll put you on that path to freedom.
So dreamer out there, you that's watching this video, I hear you saying how bad you want it. I hear you saying that you'll do anything to get it. But I got a question for you. Are you really about that life? Are you really willing to sacrifice what you like just to get what you love? Partying every weekend might be fun, but is it helping you live your dreams? If it ain't helping you live your dream, then why do it? If it ain't helping you live the life that you want to live, then why do it? In order to move up, there's some things you must be willing to give up straight up. Discipline isn't about saying no to the things you hate. That's easy. Discipline is about saying no to the things you like that don't help you get the things you love. So if you say you want a relationship, then why are you saying yes to the things that keep you single? If you say you want to be healthy, then why are you constantly saying yes to the things that keep you out of shape? If you say you want to be great, then why are you saying yes to the things that keep you average? Look, success isn't for the most talented. Success is for the most disciplined. It's for the people who have tattooed their purpose on their heart, so everything they do moves them closer to their dreams. You got to master choosing the harder right than the easier wrong. You got to master understanding what you want most is way more important than what you want now. You got to master doing what's best for your life regardless of how you feel. You got to master saying no to the things that don't get you your yes. You can't be doing what everybody else is doing and expect to be great. Lock in. You don't get to be the 1% who's special by doing what the other 99% do. Lock in. Discipline is the bridge between your goals and accomplishments. And the only person that can construct that bridge is you. Discipline might be painful at times, but I promise you this. Regret sure does hurt a whole lot worse. I want you to ask yourself this question right now. Will this behavior, how I'm living my life right now, get me to the place where my dreams rest?
You don't get discipline from your parents, from your grandparents, from your older brothers and sisters. You don't get discipline from an external source. You have to get it from you. That's what self-discipline is. You get it from yourself. You get it from you. And if you want to blame other people for the problem, and I say this all the time, if you don't take ownership of the problem's not going to get solved. So if you blame your parents for not having raised you in a disciplined environment, you're not going to solve that problem. You're looking at your parents saying, if you would have done a better job being more disciplined for me, I would be more disciplined now. So that means you can't do anything. The fact of the matter is it's wrong. You actually can do something. And it doesn't matter how your parents raised you and brought you up. You can have the discipline you need to decide to do it.
If you would like to discipline yourself, which is a very good idea, pick a direction you want to go first. Pick a goal you would like to attain, a medium to long-term goal. You might imagine something you need and want, some attainment that would motivate, whose pursuit would motivate you. And you can ask yourself that. It's a good question to ask yourself in general, If you could have what you needed and wanted, what would that be? And that's a meditative question. You don't want to force an answer out of yourself. You want to ask yourself that like you would ask someone else. If I could have what I wanted, what would that look like? And you can ask yourself that in a more differentiated way. If I could have the relationship that I needed and wanted, if I could have the friendships, if I could have the job or career, if I could have the educational pathway, if I could adopt civic responsibility, if I could engage in some creative enterprise, the next goal is to take your goal and to fragment it into micro goals until you find a micro goal that's small enough that it still presents some challenge that you will do.
The Marines have a saying, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And that's just real. At the center of bringing any dream into fruition is self-discipline. Something as simple as food and eating is not about your body as much as it is about your mind. It's getting command of your mind to be able to choose actions that are in your own best interest. Every day, we are choosing shit that's not in our own best interest, right? So if the world is attacking you and the world wants to fight you and the world's trying to hold you down, so you're going to kick yourself in the balls? So you're going to stop yourself from getting what you dream. Self-discipline is the center of all material success. You cannot win the war against the world if you can't win the war against your own mind.
And that was a little motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, thank you. And now the daily law for February the 16th.
February 16th. Love the detailed work. Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, had to spend his first 3 years as an understudy to one of the best, Brett Favre. It meant little or no opportunities to showcase himself during a real game. For those years, all he did was practice and watch. He'd later say, "Those first 3 years were critical to my success. It taught him patience and humility. He spent that time honing every possible skill a quarterback could need. Hand-eye coordination, finger dexterity, footwork, throwing mechanics. Not exciting stuff. He taught himself to watch from the sidelines with complete attention, absorbing as many lessons as possible. All of this not only elevated his skill level, but also caught the attention of his coaches, who were very impressed by his work ethic and his ability to learn. Through those years, he was able to master his impatience and elevate his game. In essence, Rodgers had taught himself to love the detailed work itself, and once you develop that, there is no stopping you. Daily law. Master the details, and the rest will fall into place. Robert Greene. 5 key elements for a new model of apprenticeship. The New York Times, February 26th, 2013.
And that was the Daily Law for February 16 from The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Bishop Robert Barron.
So for a lot of people, maybe listening to me right now, you say, yeah, at one point in my life, I was really excited about religious things, and I was excited about the Lord, but then I didn't cultivate it. And then what does the Lord say here? Some tribulation or persecution comes. Well, yeah, it always happens, doesn't it? Some difficulty, tribulation, someone attacks me, someone makes fun of me. You got to cultivate the seed, everybody. Day in and day out, season in and season out, when it's fun to do so, when it's not fun to do so. Otherwise, it'll fade away.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, a right is a moral principle defining and sanctioning a man's freedom of action in a social context. There's only one fundamental right. All the others are its consequences or corollaries. Man's right to his own life. Unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we pick up where we left off with the 33 strategies of war.
Then came the first quick, fixing the enemy's attention forward with a swift frontal attack. Jebe's raids along the river. The final quick was a doubly swift blow from an unexpected direction. Genghis's sudden appearance before the gates of Bukhara is considered by many the greatest military surprise in history. A master of psychological warfare, Genghis Khan understood that men are most terrified by the unknown and unpredictable. The suddenness of his attacks made the speed of them doubly effective, leading to confusion and panic. We live in a world in which speed is prized above almost all else, and acting faster than the other side has itself become the primary goal. But most often, people are merely in a hurry, acting and reacting frantically to events, all of which makes them prone to error and wasting time in the long run. In order to separate yourself from the pack, to harness a speed that has devastating force, you must be organized and strategic. First, you prepare yourself before any action, scanning your enemy for weaknesses. Then you find a way to get your opponents to underestimate you, to lower their guard. When you strike unexpectedly, they will freeze up. When you hit again, it is from the side and out of nowhere. It is the unanticipated blow that makes the biggest impact. By Xenophon. The less a thing is foreseen, the more fright does it cause. This is nowhere seen better than in war, where every surprise strikes terror even to those who are much the stronger. Keys to warfare. In May 1940, the German army invaded France and the Low Countries using a new form of warfare, the Blitzkrieg. Advancing with incredible speed, the Germans coordinated tanks and airplanes in an attack that culminated in one of the quickest and most devastating victories in military history. The success of the Blitzkrieg was largely due to the Allies' static, rigid defense, similar to the Shah's defense against the Mongols. When the Germans breached this defense, the Allies could not adjust or react in time. The Germans advanced faster than their enemy could process what was happening. By the time the Allies decided upon a counter-strategy, it was too late. Conditions had changed. They were always a step behind. Now, more than ever, we find ourselves dealing with people who are defensive and cautious, who begin any action from a static position. The reason is simple. The pace of modern life is increasingly growing faster, full of distractions, annoyances, and interruptions. The natural response for many is to retreat inward, to erect psychological walls against the harsh realities of modern life. People hate the feeling of being rushed and are terrified of making a mistake. They unconsciously try to slow things down by taking longer to make decisions, being non-committal, defensive, and cautious. Blitzkrieg warfare, adapted for daily combat, is the perfect strategy for these times. While those around you remain defensive and immobile, you surprise them with sudden and decisive action, forcing them to act before they are ready. They cannot respond as they usually do by being elusive or cautious. They will most likely become emotional and react imprudently. You have breached their defenses, and if you keep up the pressure and hit them again with something unexpected, you will send them into a kind of downward psychological spiral, pushing them into mistakes, which further deepens their confusion, and so the cycle goes on. Many of those who practiced a form of blitzkrieg warfare on the battlefield used it to great effect in daily life. Julius Caesar, master of speed and surprise, was a great example of this. From out of the blue, he might form an alliance with the senator's bitterest enemy, forcing the senator either to change his opposition to Caesar or to risk a dangerous confrontation. Equally, he might unexpectedly pardon a man who had fought against him. Caught off guard, the man would become a loyal ally. Caesar's reputation for doing the unpredictable made people all the more cautious in his presence, further enhancing his ability to catch those around him unawares. This strategy works wonders on those who are particularly hesitant and afraid of making any kind of mistake. In similar fashion, if you are facing an enemy that has divided leadership or internal cracks, a sudden and swift attack will make the cracks larger and cause internal collapse. Half of the success of Napoleon Bonaparte's form of blitzkrieg warfare was that he used it against armies of allies in which several bickering generals were in charge of strategy. Once his army broke through these armies' defenses, dissension would break out, and they would fall apart from within. The blitzkrieg strategy can be effective in diplomacy, too, as Henry Kissinger demonstrated. The former U.S. Secretary of State would often take his time when beginning diplomatic negotiations, lulling the other side with bland banter. Then, with the deadline for the end of the talks approaching, he would suddenly hit them with a list of demands. Without enough time to process what was happening, they became prone to giving in or to becoming emotional and making mistakes. This was Kissinger's version of slow, quick. For their initial thrust into France during World War II, the Germans chose to attack through the Ardennes forest in southern Belgium. The forest, considered impenetrable by tank, was lightly guarded. Pushing through this weak point, the Germans were able to build up speed and momentum. In launching a blitzkrieg, you must begin by finding your enemy's weak point. Initiating the action where there will be less resistance will allow you to develop crucial momentum. The success of this strategy depends on three things: a group that is mobile, often the smaller the better, superior coordination between the parts, and the ability to send orders quickly up and down the chain of command. Do not depend on technology to accomplish this. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military might in fact have been hindered by its superior communications. Too much information to be processed made for slower response times. The North Vietnamese, who depended on a well-coordinated network of spies and informers, not gadgetry, made decisions more quickly, and as a result were more nimble on the ground. Shortly after being elected president in 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt seemed to disappear from the public stage. The Depression was at its height, and for many Americans this was not very reassuring. Then, with his inauguration, Roosevelt changed tempo, giving a rousing speech that showed he had in fact been meditating deeply on the issues facing the country. In the weeks that followed, he came at Congress fast and furiously with a series of bold legislative proposals. The intensity of this new direction was felt all the more because of the slow setup. More than mere drama, the momentum built by this strategy helped Roosevelt to convince the public that he meant business and was leading the country in the right direction. The momentum translated into support for his policies, which in turn helped spur confidence and turn the economy around. Speed, then, is not only a powerful tool to use against an enemy, but it can also have a bracing positive influence on those on your side. Frederick the Great noted that an army that moves quickly has higher morale. Velocity creates a sense of vitality. Moving with speed means there is less time for you and your army to make mistakes. It also creates a bandwagon effect. More and more people admiring your boldness will decide to join forces with you. Like Roosevelt, make such decisive action as dramatic as possible. A moment of quiet and suspense on the stage before you make your startling entrance. Reversal. Slowness can have great value, particularly as a setup. To appear slow and deliberate, even a little foolish, will lull your enemies, infecting them with a sleepy attitude. Once their guard is down, an unexpected blow from the side will knock them out. Your use of slowness and speed, then, should be deliberate and controlled, never a natural tempo that you fall into. In general, when facing a fast enemy, the only true defense is to be as fast or faster. Only speed can neutralize speed. Setting up a rigid defense, as the Shah did against the Mongols, only plays into the hands of the swift and mobile. Here are further reflections on the Blitzkrieg strategy. By Sun Tzu. War is such that the supreme consideration is speed. This is to take advantage of what is beyond the reach of the enemy, to go by way of routes where he least expects you, and to attack where he has made no preparations. From the I Ching. Chen, the arousing. Shock, thunder. The hexagram Chen represents the eldest son, who seizes rule with energy and power. The yang line develops below two yin lines and presses upward forcibly. This movement is so violent that it arouses terror. It is symbolized by thunder, which bursts forth from the earth, and by its shock causes fear and trembling. The judgment shock brings success. Shock comes, oh, oh, laughing words, ha, ha. The shock terrifies for 100 miles. From Sting Like a Bee, by Jose Torres and Bert Randolph Sugar. But the genius in Ali takes his limitations and makes them virtues. Let us go step by step. I can't think of a past heavyweight champion whose punching power wasn't superior to Ali's. Yet in his first 20 fights, Ali, then Cassius Clay, won every one of them, scoring 17 knockouts. So what is Ali's mystery? Why does a man who every expert agrees has no punching power knock most of his opponents out, including a one-punch KO over Sonny Liston on Ali's first defense of his title? The answer is in speed and timing. Clay then, and Ali now, has the ability to let punches go with extreme quickness, but most important, at the right moment, just before the man in front of him is able to put his boxer's sense of anticipation to work. When that happens, the man getting hit doesn't see the punch. As a result, this man's brain can't prepare him to receive the impact of the blow. The eyes couldn't send the message back to the part of the body which would take the shock. So we arrive at one knockout of a conclusion. The punch that puts you to sleep is not so much the hard punch as the punch that you don't see coming. And lastly, by Julius Caesar. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered.
Thank you. If you're a Democrat, a right-thinking Democrat, you need to vote Republican and become a Republican. We are the true party of government. We are the ones that love government. The Democrat Party just loves power. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the latest chapter of Policecraft.
10. Death and Dying. Moss. Is Carson Wells there? Shiger looks over at Wells, who he just shot dead. Not in the sense that you mean. Javier Bardem, No Country for Old Men. A fall from a great height makes the human body come apart like a wet paper bag. It's the medical examiner's job, with your help, to locate and recover any and all body parts, every appendage, every scrap of skull and brain. You must do this because it's part of a thorough investigation. Also, it is truly poor form if a pedestrian steps on an eye or ear on the sidewalk the next morning and Major Crimes gets called in and they trace the whole debacle back to you and your inept search. While a leap off the postcard-friendly Golden Gate Bridge may seem like a serene way to go, and perhaps is, for the few seconds the jumper is in the air, it's all pain once you hit the water. When you drop from such a height, around 250 feet, water has no give. It's basically concrete. The impact unfastens your organs. Broken ribs become skewers that can penetrate the heart. And if the blunt force trauma from the fall doesn't kill you, the mighty current often sweeps jumpers miles out to sea. So you're looking at searing agony coupled with an aquatic surge, followed by drowning. They don't put that part on any postcard. If a body has been in the water a while, it turns bloated and waxy, and it's an uphill battle to figure out who the deceased was and how they died. So a police department will send out an all-points bulletin that will read something like this. On 1/4/2014, at approximately 17:16 hours, the partially decomposed body of a male was found along the high tide line at the Bay Shore Marina in Newport Beach. An autopsy revealed the body to be that of an adult male, unknown race, approximately 40 to 60 years old, 5 feet 8 inches, 140 to 150 pounds, with a 34-inch waist. No scars or tattoos were visible on the non-decomposed portion of the body. The male was missing all but 2 of his upper teeth and had only 5 bottom teeth, which were in poor condition. The male had alcohol-related liver damage. There was no trauma to the body. Fingerprints are unavailable. The male is estimated to have been in the water for approximately 2 to 4 weeks. The male was wearing blue Lee jeans and no underwear, shoes, or socks. Inside the jeans was a silver bracelet with a broken clasp. And that's all you have to go on. The agencies receiving these bulletins check their missing persons files for anyone fitting that description. If there's a possible match, that's where dental records and DNA come in for confirmation. Otherwise, the body stays in the morgue for a few months as a John or Jane Doe and is ultimately disposed of in accordance with state law. In some jurisdictions, this means cremation. In others, a pauper's grave. Performing chest compressions often doesn't work. In some cases, like when a victim has multiple bullet holes, your compressions make more blood spurt out. You're just pumping him dry. But you do them because there's an outside chance you'll save a life and because they look good to onlookers. It's also good practice. Pumping on the chest plate of an actual human being is worlds apart from CPR on a dummy. You need to know what it's like to hear ribs creak. But no matter how bad someone looks at a death scene, how obviously and graphically deceased they are, you still call for an ambulance. The ambulance doesn't necessarily have to rush in lights and siren, but it still needs to show. Because as a cop, it's not your place to pronounce people. A doctor does this, often via a remote link with the medics on scene. The only real exception to this rule is if the victim has been reduced to a skeleton or has been decapitated. Then you can skip the ambulance and just call the medical examiner, because no one has ever bounced back from either of those 2 conditions. If you've been in a house with a person who has been dead for some time, you often get the eerie sensation that you're taking some part of him with you when you return home. So you scrub mint-scented shampoo into the roots of your hair when you shower. The uniform you wore that day stays outside in a bag to be dry cleaned. Your work boots remain on the front porch. You eat your food covered with spices, picante, anything to try to flush the stench of the dead out of your mouth and chest and skin. As for the family of the deceased, they are left with a bloated corpse that has taken on bacterial gas and is emitting dark fluid from all orifices. The medical examiner will take the body away if an autopsy is to be done. Otherwise, removal is handled by a private funeral home. But regardless, it is up to the homeowner or property manager to clean what remains after everyone has left. There are private companies that specialize in this kind of cleanup, but most of what they do is what you'd do if you took on the job yourself, which is spray and mop. There are two primary ways suicidal people slit their wrists. Some cut horizontally across the wrist. Others cut vertically down the length of the arm. The latter is far more deadly because it severs the radial artery, making blood rush out more rapidly. Both approaches are excruciatingly painful, so much so that many people committed to ending their lives will cut one wrist and then be unable to bring themselves to cut the other. But even if the cut is vertical and deep, there's a chance the victim can be saved if they get to the hospital on time. In fact, one of the main reasons the U.S. homicide rate has dropped steadily over the years is that ER docs are so proficient at patching up the wounded. And they're only getting better. Back in the day, a guy took a bullet or a knife on the street and often died on the table, just grist for the mill. Now gangbangers get blasted 9 times and live to bang some more with the added street credibility of having survived a shooting. One homicide detective I talked to had another theory. They use cheap ammo now, he said. It's a recession. One of the deeply ingrained traits of law enforcement is to tell dark jokes at death scenes. I'm talking pitch black, obsidian. If 3 men are murdered while sitting in a vehicle, someone will inevitably ask if this will show up on the Carfax. Deep cut to a victim? Look at that marbling. That could be sold at Costco. Rookie cop steps in a recently murdered victim's brains at a crime scene. Hey, a wise guy will say. He was just using that like 2 minutes ago. What is wrong with us as a profession that we say these things? Maybe quite a bit. But the gallows humor is a way to keep horror at arm's length. You don't do the public any favors by becoming emotionally invested in a death scene. This is a problem to be solved, and it's your job to solve it, not be caught up in it. If you have a murdered body in the street with no ID on him, you'll figure out who he is soon enough via a friend or family member and through fingerprints. But you want to know about this person right out of the gate. Is he local? A working man? A transient? All of this will help guide the investigation. One barometer is checking the dead man's socks. If they're filthy, he's likely on the streets. If they're clean, he's probably got a home. If you come across a murder victim whose pockets are inside out and is likely missing valuables, you could be looking at a robbery that slid into murder, but you may not assume that the person who killed this man also took his belongings. As a cop, you will look at surveillance video after surveillance video showing a homicide victim sprawled out on the sidewalk or inside a business. And then people will walk by the body or come in the shop and see the obviously dead man. Some run right back out, fumbling with their phones to call 911. Others, seeing an opportunity, test the waters a bit. Perhaps there's an opening here for some free shit. I watched one such video where a woman moved in on a dead man in a diner, and in 11 seconds, she had his wallet, watch, phone, and ring like a piranha stripping meat from the bone. Such light fingers at homicide scenes aren't just limited to those people taking advantage of the dead. I recall being at a double homicide scene in San Francisco's Bayview neighborhood where the defibrillator from an ambulance was stolen right out from under the medics while they tried to save the victims' lives. I'd like to think the thief is still out there somewhere, a roving good Samaritan, properly applying the defibrillator to save the lives of people in cardiac distress, but it was probably sold that night at the corner for $15. A man is murdered in the city, and the victim's family demands to know why there haven't been any arrests. You understand they're in pain. You'd crave answers, too, if you were in their place. But answers will be elusive in this matter because the man was shot late at night in a dirty alley. There's no ballistic evidence because the bullets in the victim's body are too fragmented to test, and no casings were found at the scene because the shooter either picked them up or used a revolver. No video surveillance, no witnesses, no fingerprints, no hairs, fibers, or DNA. The victim had no enemies, or perhaps everyone was his enemy. Maybe it was a robbery gone wrong, or he was an unintended target. Homicide will still work every angle of the case, and any patrolman worth his salt, whose sector this particular shooting occurred in, will own it and hit the streets to see what they can find. But say this killer acted alone and is especially taciturn, and he's from way out of town. How would you ever solve this crime unless the suspect decided to turn himself in just for kicks? The victim might as well have been killed on an outer ring of Saturn. In movies and on television, cops will at times consult psychics to help solve such arduous murders. Some Swami types who draw on astrology and tarot cards and claim their gift is to sense the killer's life force because, you see, it vibrates at a level that differs from that of the rest of us. The mentalists will profess to have a vision of the murder. I see a body in a lake. Well, it's going to be either there or on land, so you had a 50% shot at that one. But it's all hokum to drum up business, and they're frauds, every last one. In real life, the only reason some homicide detectives might talk to psychics is that they haven't had a good laugh in a while. Because the psychics don't come through, you'll see signs advertising rewards for information leading to the arrest of homicide suspects. They usually feature a picture of the deceased, often in their Sunday best, or wearing a cap and gown on graduation day. The reward amounts vary, but typically range from $1,000 to $75,000. The more heinous and high-profile the murder, the higher the reward. Where does this money come from? It can be a patchwork affair. The local Crime Stoppers Agency, a non-profit funded by donations, will put up a few thousand. The family of the victim might contribute, often raising money online. If the victim worked for a large company, the business itself may post an award. The city and state will also pitch in, using revenues from police auctions often slated for such rewards. And sometimes the feds will get involved. ATF, FBI, U.S. Marshals, even for non-federal cases, although law enforcement may wait until the case has been cold for at least a year before releasing any funds. Some cold math can be involved here. Justice for this particular human life is worth $10,000. That other one? More like $50,000. Perhaps this is why some jurisdictions, like Philadelphia, offer a set $20,000 reward for information on each and every homicide, whether the victim is Lenny the dope fiend or Sebastian, the paragon of civic integrity. Many such rewards, even the sizable ones, go unclaimed. Maybe no one knows who did it, but more likely, witnesses fear the cost of providing information and then having to live in fear of violent retaliation from the suspect's people. Police departments can take measures to protect witnesses by making them confidential informants and sealing search warrants. But while the reward money may be guaranteed, anonymity is not. And municipal witness relocation programs are limited even in big cities. Even if a witness decides to testify and then be relocated, what kind of life will you have? Sure, there is an extra $60,000 in your bank account, but you have to spend it all in Blowpatch, South Dakota, where you've moved under an assumed name to avoid being murdered yourself. You have a studio apartment, no friends, and a part-time job at a carpet store. Plus, you still live in a state of constant dread. Was it all worth it? Murders place a tremendous strain on police departments because of the sheer amount of resources required to properly investigate the case. A single homicide can take up the entire shift of every cop in the district. When homicides are up in your sector, you feel it in a visceral way. Once the scene is secure, the real work begins. Or as former Glasgow detective John Carnacan once said, the clever stuff gets done. Blood spatters are measured, rough sketches of the scene are drawn, evidence is collected in coin envelopes and vials and cardboard boxes. Investigators write down the temperature outside, the color of the victim's clothes, the way he was sitting in a chair, all the details that might seem indiscriminate to a layman. Anyone that might know something is interviewed, and re-interviewed, because maybe something was overlooked the first time. The postal carrier, the victim's coach, the Meals on Wheels delivery man. Homicide detectives hear street whispers about killings and have to figure out if someone actually witnessed the killing, or heard about it secondhand, or if it's just loose murder talk that someone plucked out of the air and adopted as their own. If investigators find a baseball cap at a scene that doesn't look like the victim's, they'll send out an email blast to all officers in all counties, even if the hat isn't all that distinctive, even if the evidence in this case is so thin you can hardly see it. Maybe someone saw that hat on someone. Maybe it will lead to a witness. Maybe it will lead to the killer. Maybe. If all you have is a long shot, that's what you go with. Diligent homicide investigators often return to the scene of the crime to take a second look, a third look, a fourth. Detectives hope to be the recipient of a lucky break or engineer their own lucky break. Working with the victim's family in a homicide is probably one of the most enervating parts of the job, and a homicide detective ends up managing them as much as the case. Some are needy and demanding, the most human of responses to having a loved one murdered. Others lie about the victim's past. Some of them develop a friendship, for lack of a better word, with the investigator over the months and years. One thoughtful homicide investigator I know calls the family on the anniversary of a victim's death. He lets them vent. It goes a long way. He doesn't tell them he's going to catch the killers, because that's giving them false hope. He only promises he will work as hard as he can to solve the case. There is no one case file on a homicide. It's files, plural. Binder upon binder, pages and pages that show here's what we did, and here's where it got us, and here's what we plan to do next. It's a project that never goes away. Not every cop is built to carry that kind of weight. With that in mind, I once asked a homicide investigator if there were any perks to working the unit. Well, he mused, I never have to interview another victim again. If the trail leads nowhere, a cold case unit may pick up the investigation at some point. Cold case units are typically only for homicide and sexual assaults, owing to the statute of limitations, which varies state by state. There is no statute of limitations on murder, but Wisconsin, for example, has up to 6 years to prosecute a general felony. California has 3 years. DNA evidence is the primary path towards solving an aging murder. But other cases become unfurled because people like to talk, and many of them aren't used to or good at keeping secrets. They also aren't used to people closely listening to them when they talk, so when given a chance, they tend to let it all out, whether they want to or not. If you are sociable enough, pick your spot, and the stars are aligned, you can get someone to tell you just about anything. Time cuts both ways here. It works against you because people's memories fade and the proverbial trail has grown over. It works for you because as the years pass, relationships change. Marriages unravel. Friendships sour. Allegiances shift. Kiki knows her man was the shooter, but didn't say so in order to protect him, but now that same man is stepping out with her best friend, so fuck it. What do you want to know? Philip was sworn to secrecy about the rape and murder he saw right in front of him, but now he's in jail on something else, looking at 10 to 15 years, and he knows he won't last doing that kind of time. So he's taking another look at your business card. One thing about trying to erase the past is that there's always someone out there who remembers. The investigation of homicides also illustrates how crucial it is to be decent and civil to people whenever possible. Maybe some lady on the corner knows who murdered Chucky at South Halsted and West 77th last night and is thinking about sharing this information with the police. Problem is, her last police contact was some uniform stopping her for loitering and calling her a scabby bitch. She remembers that and will act accordingly. My former partner, Rolf Mueller, used to give even the gamiest hooker tissues when they got teary. He treated them with quiet deference, like gentle ladies of a bygone era. And they would tell him things. A lot of smart police work comes down to being professional, to simple human decency. Even putting decency to the side and looking at it clinically, there's still high value in treating people right. Like the old CIA saying, everyone is a potential ally or asset. Periodically, you'll have a guy come into the district station and confess to a homicide. A handful of these confessions are legit, an unburdening of conscience, or the weary act of a person worn out from being on the run. As they say, not getting caught isn't the same as being free. But there's something about death that draws in the mentally ill, and such walk-in confessions are typically complete delusion, the ramblings of a diseased mind. There are many stories in the city, and only some of them are true. But you have to sit down and listen to the confessor on the remote chance that he's for real. One fellow showed up at my workplace to somberly report to me that he'd killed a man. He presented fairly well at first, seemed sane and coherent. He reported how he set the victim up, shot him, and dumped him in the bay. So he got handcuffed and led to a cell while I ran up the alleged victim's name. He was dead all right, but of natural causes and on dry land. I came into the cell and showed the man a mugshot photo of the deceased. He nodded that I had the right guy. So I told him the good news, that he hadn't in fact murdered this man. He seemed a little put out. I asked him if he had any mental health problems, and he replied quietly that he was paranoid schizophrenic. I asked him why he thought he had killed this man. He told me he wasn't quite sure. I let him know he was free to leave. He seemed even more disappointed. When an officer leaned in to take the cuffs off and show him the exit, he promptly punched the cop right in the face. This man was going to jail for something, and if he couldn't get murder, he'd take assault. We ended up obliging him. Determining the motive for a homicide is fine and all, and juries seem to like it, but it isn't always a crucial part of the case. Legally, the prosecution just has to show person A willfully and maliciously caused the death of person B, not why. The why is just a nice bonus, like when you're at a restaurant and you get an after-dinner mint with the check. As Al Pacino's homicide detective explains to a murder suspect in the film Insomnia, "You're my job. You're what I'm paid to do. You're about as mysterious to me as a blocked toilet is to a fucking plumber. Reasons for doing what you did? Who gives a fuck?"
And that was Chapter 10, Death and Dying, from Policecraft by Adam Plantinga. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.